The air was thick with the metallic tang of an impending storm when I heard the screech of tires tearing through the quiet of my morning. I was halfway through a greasy sausage biscuit, still in my faded plaid pajama pants, when a cherry-red SUV roared across my front yard, flattening a bed of marigolds I'd spent weeks coaxing back to life. The driver, a woman with a platinum bob and a VY8 sunglasses, flung open her door, stepped out in stiletto boots, and waved at me like I was her personal doorman. "Marissa said this was cool," she shouted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I froze, biscuit crumbling in my hand, as I stared at the tire tracks gouged into what used to be my grandfather's Prideo wildflower haven buzzing with bees and monarchs. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was an invasion, and I was ready to fight back. 6 months earlier, I'd inherited my grandfather Walt's sprawling property on the edge of Crestwood, a manicured suburb where every lawn looked like it had been ironed. The old farmhouse, with its creaky porch and peeling paint, came with a barn, a few acres of untamed fields, and a scruffy lot next to the house I'd planned to turn into a woodworking shop someday. For now, it was a meadow of knee-high grass, dotted with daisies and a trio of chipped garden gnomes Walt swore kept the rabbits at bay. I'd moved in seeking peace after a decade in the city, CRAVY-ing the kind of quiet where you could hear your own thoughts. But Crestwood had other plans. The neighborhood was governed by the iron fist of the Crestwood Homeowners Association, led by Marissa Vaughn, a woman whose smile was a warning shot. I met her the day after I moved in, when she appeared at my door with a basket of stale muffins and a clipboard thicker than a phone book. "We're so thrilled to have a proper homeowner after Walt," she said, her eyes scanning my unshaven face like I was a stray dog she wasn't sure she'd adopt. She prattled on about community standards and curb appeal, but I caught the subtext: comply or else. I nodded, shut the door, and tossed her muffins to the squirrels. For a while, things were fine. The neighbors were polite but distant, their houses identical enough to make me dizzy. Marissa's presence loomed through passive-aggressive flyers taped to my mailbox, reminders to trim my hedges, suggestions for approved paint colors, and one bizarre note about maintaining a cohesive aesthetic. I ignored them, figuring she'd tire herself out. Then the cars started showing up. It began subtly, like a slow drip you don't notice until the sink overflows. Every Saturday, vehicles, minivans, sedans, a rusty pickup with a bumper sticker that read, "Honk if you love Jesus," started parking on my lot. At first, I thought they were lost, maybe turning around after missing a driveway. But when I found tire ruts slicing through my grass and a crumpled soda can wedged in a blackberry bush, I knew this was deliberate. I caught the first culprit, a guy in a polo shirt carrying a Pyrex dish of macaroni salad. "Marissa said this is the overflow lot," he mumbled, barely looking up from his phone. I told him it was private property. He shrugged, like my words were background noise, and shuffled off to whatever potluck was clogging the cul-de-sac. That evening, I found a sign staked into my lot. HOA, guest parking temporary. It was written in bubbly purple marker, complete with a heart dotting the I. Marissa's handiwork, no doubt. I ripped it out, tossed it in my burn pile, and thought that was the end of it. But the next morning, another sign appeared, this time laminated and bolted to a metal pole. I was dealing with a woman who treated my land like her personal fiefdom, and she wasn't backing down. I tried reasoning with her. I marched to her pristine colonial-style house, where the lawn was so perfect it looked like CGI, and knocked. Marissa answered in a teal tracksuit, her smile as tight as a drum. "You're not using that lot," she said before I could finish explaining it was mine. "It's better for the community this way. Keeps the streets clear." I pointed out it was private property, not HOA land. She waved a manicure hand. "We could draft a shared usage agreement." Think of the goodwill. I left without another word, my blood simmering. Over the next week, the invasions escalated. Cars parked inches from my fence. A family set up a folding table on my grass for a picnic, Leah VYing behind a trail of ketchup packets. One morning, I found a dark, oily patch where a truck had leaked something toxic into the soil, killing a cluster of native lupins Walt had planted decades ago. That was my breaking point. I wasn't just fighting for a patch of dirt, I was fighting for the last piece of my grandfather's legacy. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, a pot of black coffee, and a growing fire in my chest. I wasn't building a shop anymore. I was building a plan. Step 1. Know the law. I spent hours digging through county records online, confirming what I suspected Walt had never joined the HOA, and my lot was zoned as independent rural fringe, free from their rules. No easements, no shared access, no loopholes. The land was mine, and Marissa's guest parking was trespassing, plain and simple. Step 2. Fortify. I drove to a hardware store an hour away, the kind of place where the aisles smell like sawdust and the clerks don't ask questions. I loaded my truck with trail cameras, motion-activated floodlights, a roll of pressure-sensitive spike strips, and a no trespassing sign that looked like it meant business. Back home, I worked through the night, installing the cameras to stream live to my phone, burying the spike strips under a thin layer of sod, and rigging the lights to blaze like a stadium if anyone crossed the property line. I tested it with an old tire pop. Hiss, perfect. By dawn, my lot wasn't a meadow anymore. It was a gauntlet. The first strike came faster than I expected. At 7:42 a.m., a blue hatchback rolled in, pausing as if sensing a trap, then parked squarely on the spike strip. The hiss was music. The driver, a guy in a golf shirt, leapt out, cursing as his tire deflated. He kicked the grass, dialed his phone, and within 20 minutes, Marissa arrived, her face a storm cloud in a peach cardigan. She spotted me on my porch, coffee in hand, and charged over. "What did you do?" she demanded, her voice a mix of fury and disbelief. "Protected my property," I said, holding up my phone to show the camera feed. "It's not a parking lot, Marissa. Never was. You can't booby-trap land people are using," she snapped. "Trespassing on my land? Yeah, I can. Check the signs." I pointed to the no trespassing notice, strategically placed but subtle enough to miss if you weren't looking. For flair, I'd added a QR code linking to a folder called Crestwood Parking Fails, where I was archiving every incident. She found the sign, read it, and let out a sound like a kettle hitting a boil. "I'll have you reported for this." "Go ahead," I said. "I've got the footage. Cops love Denke." She stormed off, dragging the hatchback guy with her as he muttered about his insurance. I sipped my coffee, feeling the first real Tory in weeks. But Marissa wasn't done. That afternoon, a letter slid under my door on HOA letterhead, claiming I owed Law 1,500 for endangering community safety and installing unauthorized hazards. It was laughable me land wasn't under their jurisdiction, but it showed her desperation. I sent a copy to my friend Lena, a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. She called back, cackling. "This is performance art," she said. "Keep every scrap of Denke. She's burying herself." Emboldened, I doubled down. I added voice-activated speakers to the cameras, programmed to blare. "You are trespassing on private property. Leave immediately." I upgraded the floodlights to strobe mode, bright enough to make a UFO jealous. That night, a pickup crept onto the lot, its driver laying down cardboard to avoid the spikes. The speaker roared, and he bolted, leaving his cardboard flapping in the breeze. The cameras caught it all, and I labeled the clip Cardboard Genius in my growing archive. Marissa's next move was a new sign hammered into my lot at dawn. HOA Event Parking Code 4.1.2. It was nonsense, but she posed for a selfie with it like she was claiming the moon. I didn't confront her. I unscrewed her sign, replaced it with a steel-mounted "Trespassers will be prosecuted" warning, and added the footage to my collection. The war was heating up, and I was ready for the next round. Then came the night raid. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a camera alert. Two figures skulked across the lot, one with a flashlight, the other hauling a sheet of metal to cover the spikes. They moved like amateurs, whispering loudly enough for the mics to pick up. I hit the speaker. "This is private property. I've called the sheriff." Smile for the cameras. They dropped the metal and sprinted, one tripping spectacularly over a gnome. The footage revealed Marissa's cousin, Tara, a regular at HOA meetings who flaunted her VIP status. I saved the clip as Tara's tumble and backed it up in triplicate. Now it was time to go on the offensive. I cited the county assessor's office, where a clerk with a handlebar mustache handed me a stack of documents confirming my lot's independence from the HOA. A 1980s zoning clause explicitly barred the HOA from claiming usage rights without owner consent. Armed with this, I drafted a cease and desist letter, citing every violation Marissa had committed. Lena polished it, and I sent certified copies to Marissa, the HOA board, and the sheriff. Marissa's response was predictable. Another violation notice, this time for due law 3000, accusing me of weaponizing surveillance and disrupting neighborhood harmony. I framed it for laughs and forwarded it to Lena, who said, "She's unhinged. Keep pushing." The neighborhood was starting to notice. Cars slowed as they passed my lot, curtains twitched, and one guy, Tom, a retiree who lived across the street, gave me a nod and a keep GIVYing her hell. He'd been fined by Marissa for painting his mailbox blue. Over coffee on my porch, he spilled the dirt. Marissa had seized the HOA presidency after the pre-VYS leader retired, running unopposed and ruling like a dictator. She'd banned unapproved birdhouses, fined a kid for flying a kite too close to power lines, and once tried to shut down a Girl Scout cookie stand for lacking a vendor permit. The neighborhood was a pressure cooker, and I was the valve. The turning point came at the next HOA board meeting. I showed up unannounced, a folder of EVY Denke under my arm. Marissa, in a coral blazer, was mid-speech about elevating property values when I walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice dripping venom. "I'm here to help you," I said, passing out copies of the county documents. I played a VY Deo montage on my phone. Marissa planting her fake sign, Tara's nighttime fumble, and a guest dumping coffee grounds on my grass. The board members' 5 tired-looking locals shifted uncomfortably. I laid out the facts. My lot wasn't HOA property, Marissa's actions were illegal, and her fines were unenforceable. "You're liable if this continues," I said. "She's been warned." A board member, Claire, spoke up. "If this is true, Marissa's overstepped badly." Tom, also on the board, moved to investigate her conduct. The vote passed 4-1, with Marissa as the lone dissent. She stood frozen, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. That night, I caught her on camera pacing my lot's edge, whispering into her phone. "He can't win," she hissed. "There's got to be a way." I let her stew, knowing she was running out of moves. Her final gambit was a code enforcement officer who arrived with a vague complaint about illegal traps. I handed him my documentation, showed him the VY Deos, and pointed out the signs. He grinned. "This is airtight. Someone's wasting my time." Before Leah VYing, he added, "Nice setup. Wish I had your cameras." The knockout blow came the next day. A county attorney delivered a citation to Marissa's door for unlawful land use and HOA fraud. I watched from my porch as she read it, her shoulders slumping like a puppet with cut strings. Hours later, Tom stopped by with a beer and news. The board had ousted Marissa. She was done. With the war over, I turned the lot into something new. I hired a landscaper to restore the wildflowers, added a winding gravel path, and built a pergola where Walt's gnomes now stood guard. It wasn't a parking lot, it was a retreat, a middle finger to Marissa's chaos. I kept the cameras, though, and one sign: trespassers will be filmed. Clips may go viral. Months later, a developer named Carl offered to buy the lot for a boutique cabin rental. The number he wrote down made my head spin. I agreed, but only with a deed clause. No HOA ties, ever. By fall, a cedar cabin stood where Marissa's minions once parked, its porch glowing with string lights. Guests loved the wildflower path, never knowing the battle it took to build it. Marissa still lived in Crestwood, but she was a ghost now, her car creeping past the cabin with a defeated slowness. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The land was mine, the neighborhood was free, and the footage every glorious second was safe in a folder called Marissa's Meltdown. I shared it with Tom, Lena, and a few allies who laughed until they cried. "This is Oscar-worthy," Linus said. "Save it for the sequel." The HOA elected a new president, a laid-back guy who legalized mismatched flower pots and let kids draw chalk murals on the sidewalks. Crestwood breathed again. And me? I sat on my porch, a beer in hand, watching the stars over a lot that was finally truly mine. Marissa had mistaken my silence for weakness, but she'd learned the hard way. Never underestimate a man with a plan, a camera, and a grandfather's legacy to defend. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.